I bought the club for £1, but as part of that deal, I had to repay the bank debt, which was about £18 million. I basically discounted 3 years worth of season tickets to pay off the bank debt. So all the big clubs have at least dabbled with things like that, because football clubs, they're a cash-hungry beast. Almost everything that the press say is bullshit. Mm-hmm. Like nothing's true. There's maybe a strand of 10% of truth through each article. Most of it's bullshit. Charles Green, when I first met him, I had to lend him 25 grand to pay his legal fees. He had no money at all, and I delivered the Rangers deal to him on a plate. And he's walked away selling a load of Rangers shares, getting £6 million in compensation. The police that were investigating all this were all huge Rangers fans, and all giving the Masonic handshakes and so on.
Hi there. So the next person on my podcast is someone who will be familiar with many people in my local area in Glasgow. Ex-owner of Rangers, Mr. Craig Whyte. Now, I grew up a Rangers fan. It was horrible watching what happened to Rangers years ago. However, I wanted to speak to Craig and find out his version of the story and find out more about his business brain, because being in business myself, it's always interesting to talk to people who have had experiences, whether they're successful or failures or whatever. I think there's a lot of information we can take from it. So here is the episode with Craig Whyte. Mr. Craig Whyte, it has been a long wait for me to be able to talk to you. I've been excited about picking your brain and talking about all things business. But the big thing going into this is someone once wrote a book back in the 80s saying that you were the youngest self-made millionaire, which is obviously an amazing achievement. But any guest that comes on here, people always want to know a bit about the background. How did they start? So if you can give us a wee bit of an introduction, how that came about. A self-made millionaire in the 80s is obviously a much more remarkable achievement than it would be just now.
To be fair, it might have been the early 90s. I'm not that old to be in the 80s, but it was in the early 90s, I think. I started in business really early. I was always been interested in investing in the markets, and I started investing in at the time it was in the London traded options market when I was 15, I think I was, when I started investing in that to try and make some money. And of course, back then, it was much easier to open accounts. Nowadays, a 15-year-old probably couldn't go and open an account with a bank or a broker to trade options. But back then, you didn't have all the bullshit we have today about copy passports, utility bills, whatever. You just had to call up, give them your name and address, and you make the order. And the other great thing was they didn't ask you for any money. So you could actually go, and they had the account period at the time, which was either 20 days or 25 days. That's working days. So you could buy shares or options, and then you had 4 or 5 weeks to pay. So if you made money in that 4 or 5 weeks, the broker just sent you a check. So the first one that I did, when I think I was 15, the first one that I did, I called the broker. I'd always done a lot of research and before deciding to do this, but the first one I did, I think I made £2,000. And a week later, got a check in through the post. £2,200, whatever it was. Oh, this is amazing. This is brilliant. I'm making more money than my teachers at school. What's the point listening to these losers? So that was my introduction to the business, and of course that's something that I've kept up. I've always been interested in investing, speculating more than investing, I guess, because you're going in and out of things very very quickly, sometimes in the same day. Yeah. So I did that, and then my father had a business in the plant hire industry in Glasgow, so I was also working with him. He sold his business pretty soon after I started working with him, but I did a good grounding in that business, so I then decided to start my own business in plant hire, renting JCBs and dumpers and compressors and anything that the construction business needed. So that was my introduction to business, and I started that business when I was 19, which was always a fairly capital intensive business. So I had to go and borrow a fair amount of money to start that business at the time. So Yeah, that was successful. It was a tough business. You know, the construction industry in Glasgow is it's not an easy place to start in business. It's it was definitely a better education than going to university or whatever it would have been. So that was an interesting time. And then as after 2 or 3 years, there was a recession in the early 90s throughout the UK, but particularly in Scotland, and that was a great opportunity to start buying companies. So I expanded my business at that time and started buying security companies, security guarding companies, and contract cleaning companies, and basically business-to-business services. And quite quickly through acquisition, built up a reasonably substantial business at that time. We were probably doing sort of £10 million a year revenue and making £1 million a year back in the early 90s. And I think that's how to answer your question, I think that's how the book came about, where the guy wrote about me being Scotland's youngest self-made millionaire. Whether that was actually true or not, I don't know, but that's what they wrote. And I was certainly making good money back in my early 20s. So yeah, it was a good time.
I think, you know, the amazing thing I love, you know, in particular about that is, you know, I feel I speak to a lot of, and you know, guys that want to get into business and stuff, and they don't want to take that risk of borrowing money. Like you said, you went away and borrowed X, Y, and Z. You know, when you went on to get these other businesses, the contract cleaning companies and stuff, did you borrow again, or were you just using the cash that you were generating through the plant hire to then reinvest? How did that work?
It was mainly cash that had been generated from other businesses used to buy future business, but also there was the fair consideration, which is always something that you should use when you're buying a business, because you don't know exactly what you're buying until you're in there, because people unfortunately will present the best version of their business. It doesn't matter what the accounts say. You don't really know the true position until you get in there. So basically what we do, if you're paying £500,000 for a business, you'd maybe give them 30-40% down and pay the rest over a period of time. Yeah. So that was the way it was financed. So the first chunk was generally financed out of cash flow, although we did use other methods of financing as well, such as discounting the invoices, so that if the company has got a debtor book where they're owed a load of money, you can sell that to a discounter and you can get money in that way too. So there were various methods of financing. My point of view is always, if you can use as little of your own money as possible, that's the way to go. It reduces the risk on your own side, and you get into a business and you see what's behind the curtain. And to me, that is I get what some people are saying. They're worried about risk. They're worried about putting everything on the line. But I think the younger that you do it as well, you're more you're not so risk averse when you're young, because you don't have all the things that we accumulate over time, like families, houses, and all the things that people worry about losing. So when you're doing it in your early 20s, I think it makes it easier, and everybody should, everybody that's interested in business should be doing that. I personally, I think it's a much better education than going to some formal education, studying business at university and messing about for 4 or 5 years, albeit, a lot of my friends in Glasgow did that at the time. They had a lot of fun that I wasn't having, because I was getting up at 6:30 in the morning to go to work, but while they were still out partying. But I think at the end of the day, it's a better education, and you learn a lot more by actually getting out and doing it, even if you fail, even if businesses don't work out the way that you think they're going to work out. What a great education it is to go and do that.
Absolutely. Again, I'm in a similar situation to you, where I didn't do the kind of standard university stuff. It was trial and error. I was just
you just went out there and you did it, and you're doing it.
So again, I love that. And
do you think it's easier nowadays for young people starting out to get started, or do you think it's more difficult?
I think the mindset somehow makes it more difficult. Like you touched on something there in terms of education and stuff like that. You are kind of brainwashed to a certain degree with the education system and what people lead you to believe, and the reality of starting up a business. I help so many other people, that are at the start of their business journey, and the ones that just take the chance, I would honestly say 9 out of 10 are successful, as long as the idea's right and stuff like that.
Well, particularly when they're doing the kind of online businesses, the sort of
Yeah.
content that you're putting out, and how someone can spend a little bit of money on SEO or advertising online, and they're sometimes making 10 times their investment, which is amazing.
So I think the reality is, when you were doing it, you were buying real businesses that probably had premises and all of that kind of stuff, which required money down. But I think for online, you can get online and do an e-com store or whatever it may be relatively easy. Again, as long as the product's right, you can drop ship. So it probably is easier. But I just feel that people are reluctant to put themselves out there. Who wants to work for a boss? Who wants to work for 30 grand a year or whatever it may be? I certainly thought better of myself and took the chance, and I thought, holy fuck, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. But you think that young people nowadays are more risk averse, that they don't want to take the chances in a lot of cases.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that comes down to the things that people are telling you, your family or your universities, or you need degrees and all that kind of stuff. It's the whole education system, I think, is very, very misleading. And I actually done a talk at one point at Paisley Grammar School, and they asked me to go in for the 6 years, and they said, we want you to come in. Stirling University are there and various other people are there, and we want you to tell the parents that that's not the only option for leaving school. You can do something else, and I done that, and I've done it several times since. So I do think people are pushed down that route, which is obviously not great. But obviously doing these things and speaking to guys like yourself, these are the kind of people I like talking to, and understanding how you done it, and what mistakes you made, and maybe I can avoid those. And so I think that's probably our job in life, is to try and pass down the failures or the good things that we've done.
Well, as you say, you learn from the good things and from the mistakes. There's no question about it. And to my mind, more young people should be doing that, and they should be spending a few years starting a business. As I say, even if it doesn't work out the way that they think it's going to work out, it's a great experience, and they're going to learn so much more by doing something in the real world than by doing some kind of formal education.
Yeah, for sure. So the money down, trying not to use money, your own money, to get involved in business is obviously something I want to move on to next. And obviously, we're going to bring up the Rangers situation and what went on there. And obviously, I grew up a Rangers fan and read the press, and read the how you finance that, ticket us and stuff like that. And obviously Man United, the Glazers and everything have done similar to get to get their hands on the money for Manchester United and stuff like that. So I'm just curious, how much of it, what I've seen publicly in terms of how you finance that, how did that actually work?
Well, it's as I was saying earlier, when we're buying up businesses, other businesses, a key way to do it is by discounting the debtor book. So the debtor book, generally in a service business in particular, is a big asset, and it's common to discount that. And so if a business has got £1 million worth of debts that they're owed in, you can maybe borrow 700,000 against that, which is a great way to finance a business. So when it comes to buying a football club, a professional sports team of any kind, their biggest asset is their season ticket sales.
Yeah.
So I think at the time Rangers were doing about 12 million a year in season ticket sales, and so I bought the club for £1, which was interesting in itself. But as part of that deal, I had to repay the bank debt, which was about £18 million. So what I did, which was something that was uncontroversial at the time, I thought, I basically discounted 3 years worth of season tickets to pay off the bank debt. So it was swapping out the bank debt. So it was a debt that the club already had, and I refinanced it by selling not all of 3 years worth of season tickets, but it was maybe a total of about 60% of 3 years worth of season tickets to get that bank debt repaid, and that financed the deal effectively. So that was true, and there was obviously other methods of financing after you have control of the club, but that was the key way to get the deal over the line.
Interesting. No, it makes perfect sense when you say it like that. You've got to do what you've got to do,
and then it's a very common way of financing a football club, as you say. All the big clubs have at least dabbled with things like that, because football clubs, they're a cash hungry beast, because you've got a lot of expectations that people want to have expensive football players that are earning big salaries, and they've got to be paid, and football clubs are always looking for money.
Yeah, 100%. I wish I was getting some of it, but it's madness. But on here as well, we want to touch on Aidan, who was one of England's youngest self-made millionaires, as well. And was he your main advisor at one point?
Aidan was someone I worked with for, it must be about 30 years. Unfortunately, passed away last year. But Aidan was a great finance brain. Aidan was again, like me, worked in the stock market. He was involved in trading and involved in putting deals together. So Aidan was an advisor on Rangers and some other things. And he was a very good guy if you've got a deal going on. A very good guy to pick his brains and see what his thoughts were. And he'd always come out with some innovative way of getting something done. So it was he was an interesting guy, and very, very creative. And it's unfortunately he died very young, and it's someone that I miss having that on the end of the line to get advice from.
Yeah, just someone to bounce ideas off as always. Right. For I think certainly in the online space for me, I think a lot of people are stuck in their bedroom or their office, and they don't have someone just to bounce ideas off of. So I would always suggest try and find someone like that in your life.
Exactly. It's very different when you're when you go to the office every day and you've got a team of people around you in the office to working at home and talking to people on Zoom calls or whatever. And so it's a different way of working, but it's something that's evolved over the last few years, and it's something that we all get involved in nowadays, and we have to find ways to make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, can you give us obviously I don't expect you to give up too much, but of a recent deal that you've done, maybe in the last year or two, what have you got involved in, and how did you finance that, and how successful has that been?
Well, my main business nowadays is in investing. So I've got a principal trading company where we invest in the S&P market in the US, the gold market, which is something that I'm heavily involved in, and the oil market. So we have automated algorithms which trade the markets, and so that's a cash generative business. That's not something that needs a whole lot of investment. So it's a bit different from buying a business with a lot of fixed assets and what have you, because your asset basically is you're accounting for everything at the end of the day, because you're buying and selling with an automated system which is maybe doing 100 trades per day. And so what we're doing in the business is we're working on the algorithms constantly to make sure that the algorithms are correct, because the way that the markets work, you've got a series of patterns that repeat constantly in all timeframes, whether that's a 1 minute time frame or a 100-year time frame. If you look at charts, and someone like me geeks out on looking at these charts of the markets, whether it's oil or gold or whatever, and we trade those. So that's one of the main things that I've been working on. As we were talking about earlier, I've just started a business with. We were talking about Aidan. We've just started a business with his son Hector, who you've spoken to, and we are now looking at getting involved in doing larger acquisitions again of other types of businesses. So that's something that I'm actively working on now.
Amazing. I think that's always a good position to be in.
Yeah, the time's got to be right for it as well. So you tend to you always want to be, if you're going to do acquisitions and expand your business by acquisitions, you want to do it when the economy is maybe not at its best, because you want to have the opportunities to buy things at the right price, because nobody wants to pay. For example, if you're looking at stock market valuations and you're looking at valuations in the stock market, some businesses, their earnings ratio is like 30, 40 times, which is just crazy. Whereas if you buy a private business, you're maybe 3 or 4 times earnings. So there's a huge difference there, and obviously you're always looking for motivated sellers.
Yeah. Now, talking about getting involved in deals, and you touched on it slightly earlier, the dangers of buying a company or investing in a company. People are going to go to their accountant and manipulate the accounts and all that kind of stuff, and obviously the liability of anything that's like you said, you can enter something and it's not what it seems until you're in the middle of it, and obviously that has happened at Rangers with the kind of tax issue. Instead of being a £5 million problem, you were faced with what is reputed to be a 90 million problem, or whatever the figures are.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Yeah.
So when the big question for me asking someone who's experienced that is, when you are buying Rangers, for example, how can there be such a manipulation there that's legal? Should people be able to, I'm not saying lie, or I don't know if that's the right word, but doctor documents from 5 to 90 seems absolutely ridiculous. And I'm assuming even in your head, when you are, doing your thing with Rangers and you're going, right, I can get here, I can leverage some money here to pay that debt, and there's only 5 million, we can service that in some other way of generating funds. But can people really get away with that? I mean, that seems outrageous that happens.
Yeah, well, in that case, there was a dispute between the HMRC, the tax authority in the UK, and Rangers, and Rangers were adamant they didn't owe the money, although subsequently the tribunals and everything have come to the conclusion that they did owe the larger amount, and that became clear pretty soon after I bought the club, despite various representations from the previous owners saying no, there's no way they're gonna win the case. But it became clear, within a few weeks of buying the club, that this debt of at least 50 million was going to come due at some point. And the problem with a high profile business, which is in the press every day, living in Scotland, there's stories about Rangers in the press every day. So any other company that has got this potential liability that can put them out of business, they can sweep it under the carpet for a bit until the clock chimes, as it were. But with a high profile business, you've got all the social media chat, you've got the news media that are saying, oh, there's this devastating debt. So it makes it very difficult for the business to continue. And that was, I had conversations with HMRC saying, look, we've got to find a solution to this, and we've got to find a solution to it quickly, or else the club can't continue.
Yeah.
But trying to deal with a government department, it's like banging your head against a brick wall. They don't want to know. They've got their procedures. They're not interested in having a rational conversation like two people in business would have. They're just interested in I don't know what they're interested in. They've got the bureaucratic procedures to go through. So it quickly became apparent that there was going to be no option but for the Rangers to go through an insolvency process, which would get rid of the debt, as it were. Yeah. So, but of course, what should have happened, they should have gone through that insolvency process very quickly, like in the first 2 months, instead of leaving it until several months later.
Obviously that for me, if I had done that and put myself in your shoes, and you get in and that I mean, that's an impossible scenario to deal with that volume of money. It's just insane. You know, is the full responsibility when you invest fully on you? Is there no clawback on the people that potentially racked up that debt, because obviously you weren't involved at that
No,
point?
no, not at all. Well, I think it's an interesting question. I mean, normally if you're buying a private business, if you go and buy somebody's private business, you're paying them £1 million for it, and they give you a list of you get a list of everything, the council, this, and this, and these are the assets that the company owns, and you ask them for a warranty, and the previous owners, the sellers, will sign a warranty saying that if this is not as we signed, then you can get the money, you can claw your money back, or some of the money back. So that's perfectly normal. But if you're buying Rangers was a public company, it was listed in the stock market. The seller refused to give any warranties at the time. They were selling for £1, remember, so they weren't. It's not the seller were not getting any money for it. Basically, they were giving it away. But what came out later was that they were heavily incentivized. The employees of that company, Murray International, they were heavily incentivized to sell Rangers to get it off their, to get rid of it. It was a hot potato for them. They wanted rid of it as quickly as possible. But they were getting, some of the employees were getting 7-figure bonuses for as soon as the sale went through. The bank had given the owner of the company, the David Murray, an incentive to get rid of Rangers. If he sold Rangers, he was to get be allowed to keep his metals business, because his company was insolvent at the time. He was going bankrupt, and he was going to be allowed to keep a major part of his business if he got rid of Rangers. So there was all these incentives I didn't know about at the time. I didn't have to know about them at the time. I made the decision to go ahead with it and buy it. There were no consequences for them for offloading it in the way that they did. Whether there should have been or not is another matter. But there were no there weren't the same negative consequences for them as there would have been if they'd held on to it, and then they wouldn't have got the bonuses. They wouldn't have kept their main business, and they'd have been hit with the PR disaster, because the outcome would have been exactly the same in any case. There was no way that they had the funds to pay a 50 to 70 million tax debt.
Yeah. And you certainly wouldn't want to pay for it out of your pocket either.
Exactly. The end outcome, assuming that the tax authorities refused to do a deal, which they did, although they did say later, after the disaster of the insolvency process of Rangers, the main guy at HMRC did say, "Oh, we should have done a deal," which I told him many times that he should have done a deal, and they didn't want to know. But then I said that the administration is going to be a disaster. It should be avoided doing it in this uncontrolled way. But they don't want to listen. So
obviously you've come in. You're trying to restructure a business that's in distress. That was obviously the example there. There was a joint idea with Aidan that would have made this a success, and until other things happened within the company. What was that kind of idea to get out of all this, or was it a case of that 50 million is just scuppered anything that we can ever do?
Well, I think I don't think there was ever anything that came up in that regard. I think maybe what you're talking about is when Charles Green came in. That was Aidan had introduced Charles Green and Imran Ahmed. I went along and met them, and there was a potential remedy with those guys, because they were supposed to get in and basically front up the deal, because they didn't have any money of their own. They were supposed to get in front up the deal and then float up the stock market and so on. But they ended up doing things behind my back as well, which didn't work out. But that's life.
Yeah, it's just be careful. Just be careful and do your due diligence to anyone that's doing business.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're, it's not that easy to find someone that is going to be crazy enough to take on that sort of deal. And Charles Green was a lunatic, basically, and he was prepared to take it on and go and ride out the storm. And but yeah, once you get into a football club like that, it's kind of people, they used to call it when we were there, the blue mist comes over their eyes, and they get addicted to it. They like they like the perks that go along with controlling one of the biggest football clubs in the country, and they're very keen to keep control and make some money out of it and do the things that that you wouldn't do in any other business.
Yeah. Now, obviously, with that, in hindsight, getting the right people into your business is important, and or having the right people round about you, and potentially there's a lot of unqualified people taking on roles that they couldn't ever see out. Was that kind of the scenario there, where maybe those that came in didn't have the business nous, if you want to call it that, to be able to ride out that storm?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people get into situations like that where they want to work for a football club, for example, and they're prepared to take a lower salary to get involved in a high-profile business, and they're maybe not the best qualified for the job. But I think the big lesson for me, when you get involved in something so high-profile, that's partially, there's a lot of politics involved in these situations. So I think what's important is to have your own close team of people around you when you get into something like that, even if that team's not experienced in that particular business sector, like football. And I didn't do this to a great extent. I brought in one or two people with me, but I should have replaced the whole executive team and probably the football management team as well at the time. But because things happened very quickly at the end, and decisions that have been made before I came in there, like signing new contracts with people and so on, it would have been very expensive to do that. It wasn't impossible, but it would have been, you'd have had to pay a lot of compensation to people to get rid of them. So I decided to work with them instead, which with hindsight was a mistake.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, literally, the government and FCA are public entities and often reject businessmen. Most are no more well versed in business than the people who run local councils. What's your kind of thought on the process that goes on there? And there's obviously regulations and rules that we all have to abide by, and I don't agree with every rule that's out there, but I'm just curious to know.
I think we live in a world that's totally overregulated. There's too much government. There are too many rules. I'd find it difficult personally to believe that anyone doesn't agree with me on that, but I'm sure there are lots of people that don't. But anyone that's in business knows there are too many regulations, there are too many rules. Government bureaucrats are incompetent. What motivates someone to want to work for a government department? I don't get it. Why would you want to do such a boring, shitty job as working for a government department? And unfortunately, when you're in business, these people can come after you. It's happened to me. It happens to a lot of people in business. You're dealing with petty little people that have crap jobs, earning not a lot of money, and they want to. Their job is to regulate businesses, come after business owners, and some of them seem to enjoy doing that kind of work. But when you're on and they have virtually unlimited resources to come after businesses, particularly if it gets to the stage where you've been prosecuted by the government for whatever, and they've got unlimited resources to come after you, and you've got this crowd of incompetent bureaucrats, analysing every detail of your life, of your business, and either trying to take all your assets or have you put in a cage.
Yeah. It's not fun. Obviously, again, I've seen in the press, the court case, and you going to court, and I know it was a kind of 6-week process or whatever it lasted. But what I'm curious to know as well is, how does that? Obviously, it's a high-profile case, and a lot of people won't get into such a high-profile business, but how did that impact your friends and family? That whole case, and you've got family, you've got friends. Was there an impact on them? Were these people snooping around them, giving them trouble as well? How does it work?
Well, it wasn't so much about any bureaucrats or police or anything snooping around them, but there's always an impact because, unfortunately, when you've got something with a lot of media attention, you've got something like that going on, people assume there's no smoke without fire, which in this case was completely wrong because the whole case was ridiculous. I mean, there was one charge where I believe to this day I'm the only person that's ever been prosecuted for this particular charge, which was I don't remember what it was called, but it's financial assistance. That's what it was. Financial assistance. Now, nobody else, to my knowledge, in the UK has ever been faced court for the charge of financial assistance, which is basically buying a company using its own assets. Mm-hmm. And it only applies to public companies. It doesn't apply to private companies because it wouldn't be possible. You've got a buyer and seller who agree. But in this case, I bought the company for £1. So, I had £1. I didn't use the company's own assets to pay the £1. So the charge was ridiculous. And as I say, I believe I'm the only person that's ever been taken to court for that. The former chief executive of Barclays Bank was actually charged with it, but I think the case got dropped. It was a ridiculous case. It was, it had no chance of succeeding. The other charge was a fraud charge, but again, there was no allegation ever of having received any money or received any particular advantage. So the case was ridiculous. It should never have got to court. It didn't get to court against anyone else. It's just another example of incompetent bureaucrats with unlimited resources playing games and trying to come up with something to damage people that I guess to make a public point that to show that you shouldn't mess with the establishment club. Because what was interesting, again, to my mind, that should never have happened. The police that were investigating all this were all huge Rangers fans and all, giving the Masonic handshakes and so on. And it seemed ridiculous at the time that you had people in that position, which they seemed like they were out for vengeance rather than for justice.
Yeah, I can only imagine. But I've got two questions there on that. The first one is, obviously, other people were given compensation for, whatever was going on. I don't know the ins and outs of the legalities, but obviously Charles Green and stuff, got compensation. You got nothing, right? You got nothing for all your troubles and stress and reputational damage. How does that work? Is that not something you feel aggrieved about? Like, well, if they're getting it, surely I must be due something. If there's one rule for that guy, surely it would apply for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was quite amazing that the Scottish government decided to pay compensation to the administrators who were charged with a crime and to Charles Green and I think Imran Ahmed. But no, I don't feel aggrieved because my view is that you get on with life. There's living your life by talking to lawyers every day and dealing with lawsuits, whether you're the person suing or being sued or being prosecuted. It's no way to live to spend your entire existence doing that. My view in life is let's be positive, let's get on with positive things, and there was just to my mind it wasn't really worth the effort to be dealing with that every day for more years to come. I wanted to put the whole thing behind me. And I think that's the best advice to anyone that's screwed over by a business partner or whatever. Get out of it, cut your losses, and get on with life. That would be my advice to anyone. Not everyone's shares that point of view. There's always more money to be made out there. There's always more opportunities. Dealing with these historic things, dealing with the past, where you're going to be you're going to have to go back to court and live through the whole thing again. Life's too short for all that, as far as I'm concerned. And I think part of the reason that the Duff and Phelps guys and Charles Green got compensation was, well, again, go back to government incompetence, just paying out money because it's not their money. They don't care. But the people in charge of the legal system in Scotland changed just after that too. So I think the window probably closed on people getting generous compensation from them after that.
Yeah. I wish they would send me some.
Yes, it was. I think it's probably the best deal that they ever did. I'd say Charles Green, when I first met him, I had to lend him 25 grand to pay his legal fees. He had no money at all, and I delivered the Rangers deal to him on a plate, and he's walked away selling a load of Rangers shares, getting £6 million in compensation. And I think the best thing that ever happened to Charles Green was meeting me.
I wish you'd met me back then, and I'd have took that deal.
Well, you might not have enjoyed the hassle that came along with it, but yeah,
no, definitely not. But one other little question I want to go back to, you obviously mentioned paying the pound for Rangers. Did you actually physically hand a pound coin over, or is that just the token?
The stories in the press that say that I flicked a pound over the table to David Murray, and that never happened. That never happened. It's that you basically have a document, and they sign, the company selling it signs saying that we confirmed that we received the pound. I never flicked a pound coin over the table as was said in the press. It was just, most of what you read. One thing you realise when you get involved in a really high profile deal and it's in the press every day is that almost everything that the press say is bullshit. Mm-hmm. Like nothing's true. There's maybe a strand of 10% of truth through each article. Most of it's bullshit. And if it's bullshit in a relatively minor thing like a Scottish football club, just imagine on a bigger scale the kind of nonsense that is being spoken. And so it's not surprising that people just don't believe mainstream media anymore. Nobody, who buys newspapers now or watches the BBC? It's they've shot themselves in the foot. They've caused their own demise by not being honest.
Yeah. I've seen, things with Andrew Tate and, all of the kind of other stuff that goes on. And it's definitely something to consider, what you're being given by the mainstream media.
Yeah. I mean, it's more. They've got their agenda. They want to, for whatever reason, they've got a certain agenda. Someone like Andrew Tate, they want to close him down. And he's going through the whole prosecution thing. As I understand it, I don't know that much about him, but I can see why the mainstream media don't like someone like that, and he's a perfect target. And the same thing happens to a lot of people that stick their head above the parapet and do things in public. Yeah,
I mean, even for me in a much smaller scale, you put your face out there in YouTube or speak at a conference, there's always someone get something.
And it happens to everyone that puts their head above the parapet. But it takes a lot of bottle to do it at the end of the day. To go and put your face on YouTube to potentially millions of people out there, or to do a very high profile business or whatever. It takes some bottle to do it, and you'll always get these losers that will make all sorts of malicious comments about you. But fine, who cares about them? Nobody else cares about them. So they're worthless. They're not worth talking about. And the same goes for all the kind of journalists that write negative articles, because they just that's the mentality of these kind of people. They're not positive people. They're angry, depressed people that basically don't have much of a life. So they want to target someone else.
Yeah, and you were the perfect guy before that. But on obviously moving on from that, you have obviously went on and done other things in business, which you would have always done anyway, based on your past. But has that Rangers experience changed the way that you do business? Is there anything that you could maybe share that that you maybe changed or locked down on or whatever it was to for any other businesses going forward?
I think the key point is making sure that you've got the right team when you get into a business, having the right team. Whether it's the previous management that you've you've locked them down and you know that they're on side and they're properly incentivized. So incentives are a hugely important thing in business. So you've got to take the team, either existing or new team, in, make sure they're properly incentivized to run things the way you want them to go, and make sure there's no destructive politics there. I mean, I'd be very reluctant to do a very, very high profile deal like the Rangers one again, because there's just too many. There's too many things that are uncontrollable. Too many people that are trying to that want what you have. So you just got, if you're doing private company deals or even public company deals that nobody's interested in, you're doing a public private deal, for example, you can make sure the team's right. You can make sure they're properly incentivized. You make sure you're all going in the same direction, and that is key. And that's what, sadly, we didn't have at Rangers, because that deal could have worked very well, just with a few tweaks, with people, with the right team all going in the right direction, properly incentivized, and it could have got through the negative situations and come out the other side much stronger, as I said back at the time. But sadly, that wasn't to be.
Yeah, but moving on from Rangers, because we don't want to. There's a lot more to you than Rangers that I want to get. But you've got your joint YouTube channel called
Acquisition. Acquisition with an E after the C. ACE. Acquisition.
I didn't know if that was a typo or not. I'm like, what? Which covers tax minimization and asset protection, which again, I think business owners have to look at that stuff. Even when I first started in business, I was good at the SEO thing, and then before I knew it, I hired a guy. I got an office, and I'm like, I better phone an accountant, and and they put me like on the flat rate scheme, and which I don't think was the right thing for I wasn't generating enough money at that point to make that beneficial, because it's just not. But I think what we need more of is, clearly you understand finance and tax efficiency and business law, if you like, and what you can and can't do. And I don't feel there's enough people talking about that kind of stuff, because even in my world of online, people still have to pay tax or protect their assets and stuff. So is that all the kind of stuff you're covering on that particular channel? Are you talking about all of that stuff, and can you talk publicly about that stuff?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's something that everybody who's in business should be doing, should be taking steps to, well, one, minimize the amount of tax that they're paying, because you're paying tax in a country like the UK, 95% of it is wasted. Whatever anyone says, it's not going to. It's going mainly to pay civil servants and retired civil servants. So if you don't want to get involved in paying that, you've got to minimize your tax. I would say everyone's got a moral duty to minimize the amount of tax that they pay, because if you're paying tax, it's money that is going to non-productive enterprises and out of your business. Whereas if people are keeping the money in their business, it means they can expand the business, they can employ more people, they can do more productive things. So I think there's a moral duty to get money away from the non-productive side of the economy, which is the state.
Yeah.
Get money away from these parasites like politicians and bureaucrats working for the state. Get money away from the parasitical part of the economy and get it into the productive economy, where people are doing good things, and they're employing people, they're building cool things. So there's a duty to do that. So yeah, I'm very keen to share methods where people can do that, whether it's by using trusts, offshore companies. Everybody's different, so everybody will have a different strategy depending on the countries that they live in as well. Yeah. But it's definitely something that everybody should be looking at closely, and also in terms of protecting your assets, because anyone in a country like the UK, you're doing business, anyone can become a target. It doesn't matter who you are. You can become a target. And if you've got assets, you've got everyone's got a house, everyone's got a car, everybody's got, you've got a business. Don't think it will never happen to you, because it happens frequently. It happens to people. The state can come and take your house, take your assets, take your business. They can bankrupt you. They can they can do what they want when you're in their jurisdiction. They don't think for a minute that the government gives a damn about anyone in business. They don't care. They will come in. They will come destroy anyone if you make a mistake. If you make some wrong moves. So it's definitely something that everyone should be at least aware of, that they should be protecting their assets. And don't think it's something that is somehow immoral to do that or whatever, which it's a kind of nonsense the media spout, that it's immoral to use offshore companies or to not pay tax or whatever. There's nothing immoral about it. In fact, it's the opposite. It's moral to protect your assets from the state. The state is the state, as far as I'm concerned, the state is your enemy. The state is the enemy of the people.
Yeah,
there's no question about that. And anyone that doesn't believe that, I just never dealt with the state in any significant form before. The state is the enemy of the people. It doesn't matter what political party is in power. They're all the same. They all believe in a big state, big bureaucracy, and that has to be funded. And the way that it's funded, it's not by bureaucrats. Bureaucrats say, "Oh, I pay my tax." No, you don't really, because you're not producing anything.
Yeah,
it's businesses, all tax, everything that the state does. The state has nothing. Everything the state does is funded by productive businesses.
Yeah,
it's not funded by civil servants paying tax. These people are parasites. These people are taking money out of the economy, and not only taking money out of the economy, they're helping to destroy the economy by over-regulating the businesses that are producing in the economy. So, nobody should try and say that it's somehow immoral to avoid taxes. And there's plenty of legal ways to avoid tax. I'm not suggesting that anyone gets involved in things that are going to get them in trouble, but there's plenty of perfect legal ways to avoid taxes, and that's something that I will happily help people with.
Yeah,
and protecting your assets, which is equally important, because you don't want to get into dispute with the government, for example, or any other party that's suing you, and the first thing they'll do is they'll freeze your assets.
Yeah,
as soon as you're a target of the government, they'll serve you with papers to freeze your assets, and then you can't even defend yourself. So it's imperative for everyone to, even if you don't want to be too aggressive, at least have a few $100,000 in an offshore account somewhere that you've got access to.
That makes sense. Like even a personal scenario, Craig, that I've been going through. I've got a 93-year-old grandmother who was recently put into a care home, and I became her legal guardian. And they're like, you can't spend her money on this. You need to declare how much she's got. We're going to take her house from her to pay for the care home. And again, that you're just like, you're taught or educated to, grow up and buy houses and save your money and all this kind of garbage. And then when you get to the end of the life, the government are taking it from you again.
You've paid tax all your life, and then they'll come and hit you with inheritance tax as well on money that's already been taxed.
Yeah, and you're like, dude, you're getting to an old age, and they're still wolfing, going, we need to see her bank accounts. We need to see this. She can't have over this. Or it's £1,500 a week for a care home for her. And you're like, Jesus Christ. So for me, that was another thing that consolidated from my personal experience, where you're like, things are not set up in our favour. You have to, should my gran have done something with her house or money prior to getting to that stage? And obviously you don't know what you don't know at the time.
Oh, sure.
But yeah, I think, in all walks of life, that's very good information that you suggest there.
Yeah, I mean, you're constantly targeting, particularly anyone with significant assets is a target, and it doesn't matter how much you've paid in tax in the past. I don't know if you saw, was it this year or last year, Bernie Ecclestone, he's like 92, 93, and the government still took him to court, still prosecuted him for not paying tax. And the guy must have paid hundreds of millions of taxes all through his life. I personally thought it was outrageous, but I didn't hear anyone saying this is an outrage that they're taking this old guy to court who's paid hundreds of millions in taxes throughout his life, and they're still going after him when he's 92, 93 years old.
Jesus.
It's just shocking. These people have got no morals. They're complete scum.
Yeah. But for people watching, if you do want more of that type of advice, the link will be below for Craig's Acquisition YouTube channel if you do want to find out more about all of that type of stuff. But one other tip, Craig, you could give us for someone trying to protect their assets. Is there one tip you can say, guys, you should be implementing this now for your business or to protect those assets?
I think it's difficult to give kind of something that's going to apply to absolutely everybody, but given that everybody's main asset is their house, and a lot of people got significant equity in their house, I would certainly be thinking about putting some kind of charge with from their own company on the property to make sure there's no equity in it, that you have your equity safely tucked away in another jurisdiction somewhere. That is a fairly basic thing that anyone can do, and given that's the main asset that people have, and the same goes for anyone that's got a lot of business assets. They can put some kind of third-party security on them to make sure that they can't be easily seized.
Yep.
But it's something to take advice on. It's something that you probably can't just do yourself without getting some kind of professional advice.
So my next question, which is, where do you get that professional advice? You've obviously, the automatic assumption would be a lawyer, but again, do lawyers always work in your favor? It's like accountants. I feel like some accountants are actually just tax collectors. They're not there to help you.
In fact, some of them are the opposite. In fact, not a lot of people are aware of this, but if a lawyer or an accountant even has the slightest suspicion that you're doing anything that might be illegal, they've got a duty to report you to the government, and they can't tell you about it. And if they don't do that, they can get, I think, 5 years in prison if they don't sort of snitch on their clients. Which again, another outrage, but something that very few people are aware of. So you've got to be a little bit careful when you're talking to these people nowadays.
Yeah. Definitely.
It's something that we'll be talking about on, when Hector and I are doing the YouTube videos about these kind of asset protection things. It's something we'll be talking about and advising people on where they should go for that kind of advice. And it's probably better to use advisors in a different jurisdiction.
So, Craig, based on, we're talked about lawyers and all that kind of stuff, but liquidators, obviously you've been dealing with liquidators and probably some of your business dealings over the years. Are they to be trusted in terms of what they do? Do they work in your best interest, or is it similar to everything else that's out there where it can be hit or miss?
They can't be trusted. They're supposed to be agents of the court, and they're supposed to act in the best interests of the creditors of the business to collect the company's assets and to distribute that money to the creditors. But in my experience, all that liquidator is interested in is his own fees, and he's going to most of them overcharge. There's not really any oversight. They'll say there's a creditors committee that analyzes their fees and so on, but that doesn't happen to any great extent. The liquidator is interested in what he's going to get out of it, and the interest of the creditors is a very far second place, and your interest and the shareholders' interest is bottom of the list. So no, I mean if you're a business that's got problems and you go and talk to a potential liquidator or administrator, they'll be really friendly towards you. They'll make all the promises in the world. They'll say they're going to look after you and they're going to make sure you have no problems. And as soon as you sign on the dotted line, that's all forgotten about. So I would, my advice would be don't trust them at all, and take advice from someone that's been through that situation before, that knows how these people operate, and be very, very careful about your dealings with them. Yeah.
So does someone like yourself, who, for me, has a hell of a lot of experience, do you have an alternative like restructuring a business to avoid liquidation? Is that something you can offer to people who are maybe in trouble? Is that a service?
Well, it's certainly something. If the business is right, it's something that I'd be interested in helping with. Maybe interested in helping them to refinance a business from either my own resources or resources of people that I work with. So if there's a decent business and it's of a decent scale, which is probably means a business with at least 5 million a year in sales or more. And then, yeah, I'd be certainly interested in having a chat and see how we could help them restructure it.
Again, guys, if you are interested in, tapping into Craig's experience, the link will be below where you can go and book a consultation or whatever that involves. But what are you doing day to day, stock market wise? Are you involved in anything like that in the stock market?
Yeah, as I said, it's kind of my first passion. I enjoy trading the market, so I trade a lot of the futures market with the S&P futures, and I trade gold and I trade oil, and mainly through automated systems, automated algorithms. So, but I do some other stuff as well. But yeah, it's something that I've got my screen on constantly during the day, so I always know what's going on in the markets, and I'm interested in what's going on in the economy, and particularly in the US, because that's the main driver for all the world markets. The European markets and the Asian markets are just not as interesting. So yeah, 2:30 in the afternoon they open, and it's something that I'm looking at constantly, and it's something that that I enjoy speaking about as well, and looking at what's overvalued, what's undervalued, what the opportunities are. But it changes constantly, and it's a great way looking at the markets. It's a great way of seeing human emotions in action, because certainly in the short-term moves, it's human emotions en masse that are causing the market moves. It's not fundamentals or anything else, because fundamentals and with short-term moves don't really matter. With long-term moves, obviously they do. If you see companies like Berkshire Hathaway that have had great returns for the last 30, 40 years, that they obviously do it based on long-term investing and fundamentals. But if you're looking at the short-term moves of the market, it's all liquidity and human emotions.
It's interesting. Are you the type of guy, you remember when Ronaldo was doing a press interview and he moved the Coke bottle out the way and put water in front of it, and from what the press said, the shares in Coca-Cola dropped by a considerable amount. Is it something like that where you go, I can get in here at this, and we know that's going to go back up over is there a lot of that kind of stuff goes on? Is that also part of it? I know you mentioned algorithms and seeing patterns and all of that kind of stuff, but is there opportunities like that where you would go, I'm right in on this. This has got to be.
There are certainly opportunities where, I mean, I don't know what I remember seeing the clip of Ronaldo that you're talking about moving the Coke can. I didn't realize that it affected the share price very much. But yeah, if there's a situation like that where the share price moves for no real good reason, there's no fundamental reason. People are, in reality, are not going to stop buying Coke because Ronaldo does that for any more than 24 hours. So in that scenario that you described, that's an opportunity to go and buy the shares afterwards. So these opportunities do exist. On the other side, there are situations where things are obviously very overvalued, and you can short the shares. You can sell the shares before you and then buy them back like a month later or whatever. And there's a lot of opportunities like that. Although it tends to be much more dangerous to short a stock than to go long.
Yeah. Not a game that I play, but one day maybe.
It's interesting, but it's not for everybody. I think they say that something like 80% of people will lose money when they try to trade. It's tough because you've got to kind of do the opposite of what you feel like doing.
See, the thing for me, where it kind of puts me off, because I've dabbled in crypto and various other things as well. I'm a kind of guy where I would invest, let's say $5,000, just as an example, in crypto, and I'd be sitting looking at 2 a.m. going, shit, that's dropped to 3. Cash out, I don't want to lose the whole 5. It's the right mix. Someone said to me, I can't remember who it was, but they said you need to be prepared to play the long game and let that money sit, and you can't be like an impulsive guy like me who's sitting at 2 a.m. looking at it, and that's crazy stuff. Would you say that's the right advice for people that are looking at that type of thing?
Yeah, it depends on what it is you're buying. But yeah, if you take an example of crypto, anyone that that got involved in Bitcoin very early on, and they were buying it when it was $2-3 back in, I think, 2010, 2011. I don't know how many of those people actually stayed in until today, but they obviously made a fortune. But it's a very, very difficult thing to do. Like when you see something double again, double, it's almost impossible to stay in.
That's where I'd be out. I would take, like, if I'd doubled my money, I'd be off.
Yeah,
you know,
I think. Well, it's the obvious thing to do, isn't it? It's human nature. You double your money in something, like, it can't possibly go any further. It's not going to double again, is it? But you know, and it happens very rarely too. So, and I think we all know that in the back of our mind somewhere. But yeah, I mean, they say that some of the portfolio managers, when looking at people's portfolios, some of the best performing portfolios are from people that have died, because they can't do just what we're talking about. They can't sell when something's doubled. So it just goes on, and the states can through probate or whatever, and if they're in a rising market, everything rises. So they end up making a lot of money because they can't make decisions. So yes, to answer your question, sometimes it's best just to make a decision. Yes, the fundamentals look good in that. The overall market is looking good. Let's just buy a bit of this, and I'll look at it again in a year. It's money that I can afford to lose. It doesn't matter about halves. Let's just not look at it. I think the wrong thing to do is to look at things every hour and panic about it. That doesn't really work for your average person.
No, definitely not for me anyway. But what is your view on the free market and its benefits when the governments don't get involved?
I think it's the key to everything. I think government should keep out of the way. I think capitalism is the only system that's proved to have worked again and again and again. But do we have capitalism today? Less and less, because things are overregulated, things are overtaxed. There are very few places, if any, that you could say, yeah, they really have a true form of capitalism in this country. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely for the free market, definitely for government getting out of the way, for having no restrictions. But if it were up to me, I'd cut the size of the government by probably 95%. And there's I don't know if you follow the Latin American markets closely, but there's a recently elected president in Argentina, a guy called Javier Milei. And he's a self-avowed anarcho-capitalist, and he surprisingly won the presidency of Argentina. And he says he is, before he got elected, he said he was going to burn down the central bank, because central banks are completely immoral. They print currency, they cause inflation. Inflation is just another way of government stealing people's money. But he said he was going to burn down the central bank. And more recently, he's saying, look, my job is to destroy the state from the inside. And that's what he's set out to do. And I hope he's successful.
Interesting. We'll see how that goes. I'll keep an eye on it now.
Yeah. It's you know, he doesn't have complete control of Congress, so whether it works or not, I don't know. But if he can do even half of what he's trying to do, I think Argentina's got a very bright future.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. But
yeah, unfortunately, we're not seeing very much of that in Europe, and certainly not. The UK seems to be going in completely the opposite direction.
Yeah, it's not good.
And where you are in Scotland, that's been socialist for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, and I don't think there's no signs of it changing anyway. So
yeah. But apart from that, it's a nice place. So.
Even that's debatable. The weather.
Well, it depends where you are.
But home's home for me. But
yeah, no, exactly. I do enjoy. I don't live in Scotland nowadays, but it's always good to visit, and the people are always friendly.
Yeah, they are a decent bunch. I can definitely agree with that. But going forward, Craig, where do you see yourself, in the next 5 to 10 years? Obviously, you're doing your thing. You've got the YouTube channel and everything else that's going on. Are things changing? Are you going to be building a kind of online side of things, or where do you see yourself going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, it's interesting. obviously more of the same with what I'm doing in my investing, trading. Hopefully going to be doing more acquisitions. Obviously, I'm putting my head above the parapet and doing this YouTube thing with Hector, with Acquisition, and looking at getting involved in new opportunities with that. So that's an exciting project. And but yeah, I mean, I'm just looking to do more of the same things that I enjoy. I'm looking to work with people that I enjoy working with, speaking to good people and getting involved in new business opportunities with them. So yeah, I think I'm very positive about the future. I think it's going to be an exciting few years, and none of us ever really know exactly what the future holds. But I'm very confident that things are going to go great.
And do you think for a man like yourself who's done very well from a very early age, do you think you'll ever stop working? Do you think you're the type of guy that will get to whatever age, let's say 65, and say, enough's enough, I'm just going to sail off into retirement? Or are you the type of guy that's always going to be, doing deals and acquisitions and things like that?
I think you've got to keep going. I think you've got to keep your mind active. I think it keeps you young as well. I think when you see people, in their 70s, for example, 70s, 80s that are still working, they're much more alert. They look much more physically fit as well. So I think considering that's an important aspect of it. But as long as I enjoy what I'm doing, I'm going to keep moving forward. And I couldn't see myself retiring and saying, I'm going to go and settle down the beach or settle down a yacht. I mean, there's only so much of that kind of thing you can do. You get bored.
Yeah, I think I would be the same. I don't know if I could ever. I just like the doing a deal or getting a deal where you think you can actually add value to it.
Exactly. You're always going to, I think anyone that's in business that has experienced that kind of thing, you're always going to get buzz out of it. You're going to get buzz by getting deals over the line or getting something do something that has worked out really well, or even something that doesn't work out. What you say, what I learned from this, and let's do it differently next time. So whatever it is, I think the benefits of staying in the game are much more than not being involved anymore. And I personally struggle to understand the mentality of people, and I do talk to people that say, I've only got 5 years to go till I retire, and I'm really looking forward to that. Whatever. I personally, I don't get it, but everybody's their own.
Nah, I like that. I like that. Even my last guest, where I was telling you when I last spoke to you, Dan Pena, he's 80 or 79, going on 80, and he just loves a deal. I don't think that guy will ever stop. But one thing on Dan Pena that he said was, and I'm curious to get your opinion on it. He said to me, Craig, he says, although it's 2024 and things have evolved and everything's out there, he feels that there's just so much business opportunity out there, and he feels like, see, if he wants to go and get involved in a business, he'll just go and take it, and he'll dominate the thing. Do you still see it like that as well, where you're like, with your skill, with the right business, of course, do you feel like you can just go in and there's not a lot of competition out there? Do you still have the confidence to say, I can go in here and I can absolutely obliterate this market and, go from zero to whatever that might be? Is that how you see it as well?
I think that's right, because a big thing, and you must see it with what you do as well, 90% of it is just showing up, because most people nowadays, a lot of people don't show up. They don't want to do it. They don't want to put themselves out there and do things, go and do the deal, or put themselves out on in public like you're doing, for example. Yep. So I think what Dan's saying is absolutely correct. If you decide you're going to go for it, you just get in there and you make it happen. And at a certain level, and the higher up you go, the less competition there is. The bigger the deal size that you try to do, there's not very much competition there, because there's not many people trying to do these deals. And on the other side of that, if you want to finance deals, there's a lot of money out there at the moment, because you've got this constant flow of capital, and the big banks and the family offices and other institutions have got money, and they're under pressure to get that money out there. So they're looking for opportunities. They're looking for guys to go out and do deals. And go back to what we were saying earlier in the conversation, there's so many people that are risk averse, and they just don't want to do stuff. They don't want to put their neck on the line, and there are others that just don't want to show up. And also, you may have experienced this yourself. You've got a lot of people who are not experienced in doing deals, particularly acquisitions, and they say, right, I'm going to buy this company. They go and talk to the lawyer about it, their accountant about it, and it's all negative. The feedback you get, oh no, you shouldn't do this because of this, and this, or I think everybody in business has experienced that at some level. That they go and talk to these so-called professionals, and they try and put them off doing positive things, and it can be the same when you're talking to family and friends because they don't understand business. They'll say, "Oh, it sounds a bit risky to me. I don't think you should do that." Whereas you've got to go with your gut instinct. If something feels right and you think you can go and dominate that business, you go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with that. But one thing, and I couldn't get the answer out of Dan, so I'm going to try you with it. Obviously, there's businesses that I've personally invested time and money into, and they've not always worked out successfully. How would you, or Dan kind of did answer it. He basically said, Craig, I could make an average looking business do well. I would just throw money at it, which I don't think is always the right answer. I think there has to be a time where you have invested in something and you go, shit, this is not working. How do you identify and jump out? How would you give advice to people on that? Because even with the Rangers thing, there must have been a time where you've went in and walk in day one and you're top of the world. You're the big boss and which is my hometown team, feeling top of the world, and then you look at all these other things and you're like, Jesus, it's time to figure a way out. How do you try and do that with not Rangers, for example? I know that there was money and tax and all that kind of stuff issues that probably made that choice for you. But if you bought an e-com store or whatever it may be, what would be the warning signs where you go, right, enough's enough?
Yeah, well, I'm certainly not of the mindset that you keep throwing money at something that's obviously not working. So I'd be saying the opposite. I think you want to pull the plug on something that's obviously not working reasonably quickly. You've got to. It depends on the business, but and you've got to ask yourself: is there part of this business that can be saved? Can I close that part of it and keep this part of it, and it's going to work well, or is the whole thing just not savable? So if you come to the conclusion the whole thing is not savable, then you just cut it as quickly as possible, because there's, to my mind, there's no point in throwing money at it. But there's, in my experience, there's normally at least a part of a business that's worth saving. So if you got for example a chain of shops, you've got 50 shops, there's probably 10 of them that are doing okay, and 40 that are losing money. So you keep the 10 and you close the 40. And you restructure that into a new company, and you get rid of the liabilities that are in the loss-making part of the business, and you start with a clean sheet with the profit part. I mean, that's my philosophy on doing that, and I think that's what makes most sense. I think it makes no sense to keep throwing money at something that's not working, unless because if something's not working, throwing money at it doesn't always help.
Nah, definitely not. I kind of get, he's got a lot of money and maybe it's too stubborn and just would keep throwing it. And for me, I feel many business owners don't think maybe like yourself, where you're thinking outside the box, going, oh, could I take part of this business even if it's not the full thing? I don't feel a lot of people think like that. I think that's, these people that think like that are in the minority. I think a lot of people are crazy with their thought processes.
I think going back to what we were talking about earlier as well, a lot of people who've got a business, to use our mythical retail example. You've got the retail business with 50 shops, but 10 are profitable. They're going to go and talk to their advisors, and their advisors are probably going to say, well, either you've got to raise money for the whole thing, or you've got directors' responsibilities. You've got to put it into the whole thing into administration, and then you lose a lot. So the people are not getting, I think, good advice in a lot of cases. And and as you say, you've got to think outside the box. You've got to think, what can I do that is going to make this business work? if that's by downsizing it, great. If there's something you do to expand it, by taking your business into e-commerce or doing things like that, even better, because you can maybe then save the whole thing doing it that way. But you've got a limited time scale to make these decisions, because if you've got a business, for example, it's losing a couple million quid a year, what do you do? How long are you gonna fund that for?
Yeah.
And that's a decision that for most people would be quite pressing, because they don't want to keep funding it, because that can, it doesn't matter how deep your pockets are, you can only get involved in so many of these businesses that aren't working, and you've got to know when to cut and know which parts to save and which parts to cut loose.
And on that kind of topic, when you see a distressed business like a shop chain that's got 50 shops, and 10 of them are really good, I'm making the assumption that is the kind of investments that guys like you are looking for, where you go, where you think with your experience and your mindset and everything else, like I can buy this for peanuts because it's in real trouble, and I do believe with your method, if you like, that you can restructure that business and then make it a viable business that you can possibly flip on. Is that, am I right in saying that?
Yeah, that's exactly the sort of thing that we're looking at doing. Yeah,
because I do similar with online businesses. I'm always looking for someone who's maybe not marketing themselves, or don't have the ability to market themselves, or they don't have the cash to do paid ads, or they don't do SEO very well. That for me, I don't look at that. I'm looking at that as oh Jesus, I could come in here.
Yeah, there must be a huge. I mean, I've never really done a lot of online stuff, but there must be a huge amount of opportunities like you've described there. There's got to be. How would you go about finding those types of opportunities?
I showed you last week. I actually have a marketplace website that I'm trying to encourage people to come to me with those opportunities.
Yeah, perfect.
And selfishly, I will handpick the good ones for me, and then there's plenty of other people in the industry who are also looking for investment opportunities, and whether that be 10 grand, 50 grand, $1 million. There's a big market all over there, but certainly for the online industry, there's a lot of people, probably between the kind of 10 to 100 grand, who people are willing to take that gamble on investing that and then growing it and flipping it on. So, I found a lot of success with that method online. I've obviously never done it with a cold hard business or a shop chain.
It's the same. It's exactly the same philosophy.
Yeah, and it's just implementing my team, my strategy, and everything else, and knowing that I could pick, go in there and make a massive difference to how that's set up. And for me, I always say it on YouTube, I sometimes feel like a vulture looking for people that are not very good at what they're doing.
You're helping them out, because and maybe you take a stake in their business, and they might stay involved in it in some shape or form and get a piece of the upside. Yeah.
So for me, it's win-win all round. But a lot of people like you, Dirty B, you've done this. But for me, it's finding those opportunities which excite me. And when you invest X amount of money and you flip it on for a lot more, there's no better feeling. So
it's a great feeling if you're presumably you can buy some of these online businesses pretty cheaply, and with your skills, it probably doesn't take you very long to turn them around. Particularly if you can turn on paid advertising quickly, for example, and you've got a business that was making nothing, and all of a sudden you're making 20-30 grand a month. You've then got a very valuable business.
Yeah, it's what you alluded to at the start, Craig. Some people are risk averse and they don't want to do the paid ads. They maybe don't have the budget for it, or they're scared, or whatever it may be. But if there's something that's in demand out there, then you can't really go wrong. As long as the price point and the profit margins and everything are on point. And I think there's just certain people in the world that are risk averse, and there's people maybe like yourself and myself that are prepared to take that opportunity, and obviously where there's risk, there's rewards, which it's one of the reasons I was interested in speaking to you, because I know, obviously from reading and stuff, I know that's something that you've done from a actual business. Which obviously relates a lot to what I'm doing. Obviously, the money down on what we have to do to buy an asset. We're not buying something that's got 50 shops or anything like that. So the money is the barrier to entry is nowhere near as high. So I think just it's a great opportunity, either way to look at that. And
but there must be great opportunities to consolidate some of these online types of businesses where nobody's really done it to build like a huge group of these kind of online marketing businesses or whatever they might be. There must be I don't know enough about it, but there must be really interesting opportunities to do that, to really consolidate some of these types of businesses.
Absolutely. All I say is we call it digital assets. You've got to invest in digital assets as well. You don't just I've got friends that just invest in property and try and build up some money doing the whole buy to let thing and making peanuts per week. But what I would say is £200,000 down on a property would get you rent of about £1,200 a month. If you bought a digital asset at £200,000, you're likely to be pulling in between £5,000 and £7,000 a month. So where does your 200 grand go? Now, the argument with people is, a house sits there and it'll be there in 100 years' time. A digital asset might not be, but again, if you understand the game and you're confident in your own abilities, I think that's where you will get success.
Well, with your skills, you're buying an asset that's generating £5-7 grand a month, but with your skills, it's going to be very quickly 3-4 times that.
Yeah, and that's the job. If you 3 or 4 times that, you're 3 and 4 times in the amount you can sell it for.
That's right. Well, you're probably taking it from 200 grand to 2 million then.
Yeah. So that's for me, it's like free money. I'm like,
to me, that's much more exciting than buying a house that you rent out for £1,200 a month or whatever. Yeah. And the other advantage that I see with digital assets is that they're location independent. Yeah. And that goes back to the conversation we were having about asset protection as well. You're not. It's very difficult for anyone to come along and take those assets from you.
Yeah.
So whereas your house, okay, it might be there in 100 years, but is your family going to own it 100 years? Because it can be anyone that wants to grab your assets can go and take it whenever they want.
Yeah, it's that's a weird world, and like you say, I could fall and hit my head, and my house gets taken off of me for care fees or whatever it may be. Someone is literally waiting to pounce unless you protect that from happening.
Yeah, well, nobody knows what the future holds. There's all sorts of situations that happen in life that are unpredictable, and it's just worth spending a little bit of time, protecting your downside.
Yeah, 100%. But Craig, we are at the end of the list. Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to put across, or?
I don't think so. That's been a good conversation. I enjoyed it. So all good as far as I'm concerned.
No worries at all. But I want to thank you again for your time. I do appreciate you coming on. And for anyone watching Craig's YouTube group and any other information that you need to get in touch with Craig and his team, the links are below. But thank you again, Craig. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. Great to talk to you, Craig.